Welcome to the Stereoactive Movie Club. My name is Jeremiah, and I'm here with Alicia, Mia, Steven, and our special guest for this round of movies, Michelle. And we're going to be talking about the 1999 film Beau Travail, directed by Clair Denis. But before we go on, let's hear from everyone about one movie they've watched recently that they want to talk about here. Steven, let's start with you.
I watched the new Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie last week, and I really, really enjoyed it. I had no expectations of it, and my former roommate, JPK, who's a friend of the podcast, recommended that I see it. He just said, "Oh, you'll love it," and I really did. It was kind of refreshing to see a movie that wasn't trying to be set up for a sequel or more. It was just sort of self-contained. Plus, everybody had such fun doing the movie. It just felt like a really good movie just to watch. It wasn't heavy or anything, but it was just really enjoyable. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. So, I feel like people should see it if they're in for something kind of light and fun, and it's self-contained. It was good.
Great. Alicia, how about you? What have you been watching?
I went to see with Steven a movie called Polite Society a few weeks ago. It took place in London. It was about two sisters and their relationship. And they were both like Indian British, I think. So it was about sort of that, a little bit of like that culture and an arranged marriage. And I went to some places I was not expecting it to go, but it was really funny. And it was very good. So I would definitely recommend seeing it.
And Michelle, how about you?
So I watched a bunch of bad movies with my 10-year-old daughter, starting with Princess Diaries 1 and 2, which I had never seen them. And I just want to mention them because I don't know if any of you have seen them. But in the first movie, one of the characters says, "Look what we have, the perfect nerd couple, Mia and Jeremiah."
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously?
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I never knew that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. And then, yes, we watched 1 and 2, and I was kind of half watching them, but I think she kind of developed a little innocent crush on Chris Pine. So then we watched Star Trek 1 and 2 and the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Oh, wow.
So, but I wouldn't really want to talk about any of them. I enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons, Steven. It was pretty fun. But we also saw, not Zoe, but Jack and I saw Beau is Afraid, another Beau movie, and I loved it. It was amazing, I thought.
Yeah, I still need to see that. Mia, have you seen anything?
No, I was about to say, to balance out Michelle, I haven't seen anything. We've been traveling, and I've been continuing my rewatch of Girls, still going strong there. And obviously just like deep into only thinking about Succession all the time. So
Yeah, as we're recording this, we're just a couple days away from this series finale coming out. Well, despite our traveling, I happened to see two movies while we were in New York because I made a point of getting out to see some stuff that was playing there. I saw Blackberry, and I've heard jokes about how there's quietly a IP brand cinematic universe developing between this movie, Air, and Tetris. And there's a movie about Tetris, about the person who made Tetris. So I didn't see Tetris. I did see Air. I heard someone who had seen all three point out that the difference with Blackberry is that it's about a failure, a massive failure. So I think it's the better movie overall. I mean, I didn't see Tetris. I heard it's good. I saw Air. I didn't like it as much as other people, but Blackberry is pretty good. It's not like the best movie ever, but it's engaging, it's entertaining, it's funny, and I'd recommend seeing it if you have any passing interest at all in the movie, or you like Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, anything like that. So it's worth a watch.
It's interesting that we're getting into the point where we were all alive when that was invented.
Yeah.
So we actually remember, when they came out and all that stuff. Same thing with the shoes, or
Right.
I don't know how old Tetris is, but it became a big thing when we were young. So it's
Right.
kind of fun to watch something that kind of developed when you were of age and remember it.
Yeah, that's true. So for those who may not have listened to the show before, this is a podcast where we discuss movies that have appeared on Sight and Sound Magazine's poll of the greatest movies ever made that comes out every 10 years. And again, this time we are talking about Beau Travail. But before we get into the history and background of the movie, what did each of us know about it going into this viewing? Who, if anyone, had seen it before? And if you hadn't, what were you expecting, if anything? And since I picked this movie, I'll start us off and also remind everyone why I chose it. So basically, I chose it because it's one of the newest movies to enter the top 10 in the list that came out last year, just in December, so not very long ago at all. And so that piqued my interest of it being something that entered so recently. It's also by Clair Denis, who I know is a filmmaker that I have a big blind spot of. I'd only seen before High Life, which I loved, and I've been meaning to see more of her movies, so this was a good excuse. And also, it is loosely, I knew this, based on Herman Melville's Billy Budd, which I always thought was an interesting story, so that was intriguing to me as well. So those were my reasons for picking it. Beyond that, I don't know that I had much in the way of expectations because, I didn't really know what the movie was outside of the Billy Budd aspect. And so I feel like my expectations were both high and completely low. They were high because this movie is so high on the list now, and low because I just don't know what this movie is, or I didn't know what it was before watching it, really. So that's where I stood. And Michelle, how about you? Had you seen it before? What did you know about it? What were your expectations, etc.?
No, I had never seen it, and I knew pretty much nothing about it except for the director, Clair Denis. So yeah.
Okay. And Mia?
Yeah, nothing. I knew Clair Denis, but beyond that, nothing.
All right. We're buzzing right through this round. Stephen?
Yeah, I'd only heard of the director, never heard of the movie. And I was kind of intrigued that it was so highly rated. So I was really curious about it.
Right. And Alicia?
Yeah, I also really didn't know much. I did know that it was a French film, obviously, from the title. And then I knew that it was loosely inspired by Billy Budd, which was a story that I was supposed to read in high school and pretty much was like, I'm not reading this shit. And didn't read. I wasn't a Melville fan. I read Bartleby, and I liked Bartleby the Scrivener. I Prefer Not To. I liked that.
Yeah.
But I think I was very much in my teenage girl world of this sounds terribly boring and I'm never gonna read this. But I would go back and give it another shot now after watching this and knowing a little bit more about it. So, but anyway,
yeah,
that's all I knew.
Well, for me, I had read Billy Budd in high school. It was an assigned book, my freshman year of high school, and I remember it's one of the few books that I can really remember the conversations about it and the things that the teacher told us about it and his sort of lessons about the book. So again, I think that's why I had an interest in the movie outside of it being Clair Denis and it being where it is now on the list and all that. Okay, so that's where we stood on the film before watching it for this episode. And we'll get more into the film in just a moment. But first, let's take a break. And we're back. So, as we've done in recent episodes, I thought I'd start us off by reading from Sight and Sound's entry for the film on their website, which in this case is written by Simran Hans. As always, the parts that may be more subjective are not from me personally, but perhaps we can delve into those things as we get into our group discussion. It started as a sort of joke. Clair Denis was commissioned by the TV network Arte to make a film about foreignness, and so, wryly, provocatively, she made a movie in which her own people were the foreigners. In Marseille, Sergeant Galloup, Denis Levant, reflects on his time as a perfect legionnaire in Djibouti, East Africa, serving the French Foreign Legion. He and his soldiers, including the undeniably pretty and unusually well-liked Gilles Sintain, Gregoire Colline, perform highly choreographed military drills in the desert heat. Under the blazing sun, resentments simmer. In the evenings, the men dance at a nightclub with the local women, who are beautiful, modern, and ambivalent. Djibouti, a former French colony, gained independence in 1977. These soldiers are irrelevant. The colonial project is obsolete. Unfit for life, unfit for civilian life, is how Galloup describes himself in his diary. But feeling unmoored from one's purpose, feeling like a foreigner to your own life, is a timeless conundrum and one that seems to resonate with both film lovers and filmmakers. Barry Jenkins has mentioned its influence on 2016's Moonlight. It remains Denis' only true crowd pleaser. Denis' great gift is her ability to evoke emotion with gesture and juxtaposition. In the Djibouti desert, water shimmers and ripples, naked shoulders perspire, and black mosquito nets recall sheer lingerie. In a Clair Denis film, dialogue is sparse, but images are charged with meaning. Making films for me is to get rid of explanation, she told The Guardian back in 2000. The final scene is pure release, a wordless explanation after 90 minutes of tension. Visual references travel through quotation marks in other works, and in recent times through the internet. Films are portioned up and divorced from their original contexts, reappropriated, and shared as memes. I wonder if the renewed popularity of Beau Travail in this decade's greatest films poll is a result of its increased visibility among a younger generation, many of whom have likely encountered or at least revisited its euphoric dance floor set conclusion via their computers. Again, that was all from Sight and Sound's website. Beau Travail, which is something of a loose adaptation of Herman Melville's Billy Budd, received good reviews when it was released in the United States, even topping the Village Voice's critics poll in 2000. It was also recognized at several film festivals and by critics associations. To give a sense of what was popular in the United States when Beau Travail was released, American Beauty was the big winner at the Oscars in 1999, while Gladiator and Traffic were the big winners in 2000. Meanwhile, the highest-grossing movies in North America for 1999 were from 1 to 5, Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, The Sixth Sense, Toy Story 2, The Matrix, and Tarzan. As for our purposes, Beau Travail made its first appearance in the top 10 of Sight and Sound's greatest films polling last year when it was ranked number 7 by critics. It was also tied at number 14 on the director's poll. And among the filmmakers who had it on their top 10 lists that year were Steve McQueen, Kirsten Johnson, Adam Egoyan, and Barry Jenkins. So, since again, this was my pick, I guess I'll start us off with my thoughts on the film and whether it met my expectations. And as I said before, my expectations were kind of split, or whatever you want to say, because on one hand, I expected it to be a great film because it's listed now as the number 7 greatest film of all time by critics as of 2022. And also, I didn't know that much about it, so I wasn't sure where to go with my expectations exactly. But I find myself needing to say that this is a movie that I want to like, or I wanted to like, as I'm watching it, and I'm just not sure quite fully how to process it yet. Like I think I understand the movie. I'm not sure I can say I enjoyed my watch of it. Although I've like reading about it some more, like I enjoy that aspect of it, of kind of like learning about the movie. That's always a nice thing to be able to do. But I'm just going to say for now, it's a movie I would really like to like, but I can't say that I quite do at this point. So Alicia, what were your thoughts and how did it match any expectations you had, which I think you said basically you didn't. So
I actually really, I liked it. Like, I watched it like 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really just thought it was like visually, like, I mean, I will say this, it's going to be really hard for me to put into words what I liked about it. But I just thought it was like visually stunning. I mean, the landscape that they were in was like amazing, with the sea and the mountains and the salt flats and all of that. It was just like so foreign to me. And I just thought it was like beautiful. And then I found myself like drawn into this Galloup's, story, and I sympathized with him, but also, you see this villainy or this villainous sort of side of him. And but it left me with a lot of questions too. And I think that's why I did go back and watch it a few times, because I was like trying to get my head around what I thought happened. leading up to the final events. And also there's like that sequence towards the beginning that he says portends the final events. I couldn't quite wrap my head around what happened there either. But yeah, I don't know. I liked it. And then the final scene, I was just like so moved by that. It's like such a simple thing. And we have seen it at this point in culture. We've seen it like many times, but it still was really effective for me. And I think I also hadn't heard that song in like a long time.
Yeah,
so I was like, and I never thought of it as like particularly like emotionally moving song either. So to see it in that context was like new for me. So I liked it. Yeah. I wasn't expecting a lot because I didn't like Billy Budd and I didn't know much about the movie. But yeah, it took me by surprise and I liked it.
Great. I do want to say that I feel like this is a headspace movie. That's what I would call it. Like I think it's a movie that you have to be in the right headspace when you're watching it, maybe for it to hit you the right way, or at least the first time you watch it, so that you can make a connection with it. Or like you have to have that one good experience of like being in the right headspace and enjoying it, whether it's your second, third, fourth time ever seeing it or something, and then like you can lock in on it. Maybe I've had movies like that before, and this seems like that type of movie. But I don't want to talk much more. I want to bring in Steven. Steven, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, it's kind of echoing what you said, Jeremiah. I did watch the movie twice. And the first time, as you know, and anybody who listens to the podcast, I usually try to make sense of things in like a linear way when I watch something. So when that doesn't happen, I get really confused. So I think upon first watch, I sort of understood what it was. And then watching it again, I really liked it a lot more. Because the aesthetic kind of forced you to look at that more than you did pay attention to the dialogue because it was so sparse. So I did find myself paying attention a lot more to like, the body language and the atmosphere that we were looking at. And it felt really timeless too, because other than some of the things that you saw with like the coffee maker and stuff, it could have been like, the 30s, because of like how they interacted with each other and the sparseness of where they were. So I kind of appreciated that about the movie. I was a little confused about the timeline. I think it was halfway through the first viewing that I was like, oh, this isn't happening in real time. It was sort of like he was kind of doing a look back of it. So that to me, I was sort of like, oh, I need to watch this again so I can kind of understand what that was about. Because there were some scenes that I thought were happening at that time, but he was like wearing like a black outfit. So I was like, did that happen later, like when he was in town and he was like living by himself, or was that when he was actually, in the service? But overall, it was really great. It kind of also reminded me of those 90s like Calvin Klein ads where like there was just like a lot of focus on muscles and, how beautiful everybody was. And they're kind of ambiguous looking as they were walking around because all the guys sort of like they're very attractive, but yet they had a similar quality to them. So I kind of was trying to figure out what that was about. But overall, yeah, it was just really powerful, I felt. And I did enjoy watching it. It is one of those things I feel like I need to watch even one more time to sort of understand a little bit more. But yeah, I liked it overall.
Yeah, to your point about not realizing at first that it was a flashback, that it was happening in two timelines, basically. I'm not sure that I would have known that, except that I did happen to read something about that in advance. So I knew that he was in Marseille and reflecting on his time in the French Foreign Legion. So I really am not sure I would have known. I might have been in the same boat as you, but I happened to have read that, like I said. Mia, what did you think?
I didn't love it. I thought like aesthetically it was so beautiful. I really liked that of it, but like just like the plot, I don't know. It didn't hook me. I would watch it again. Like I definitely think it's one of those movies that like on a second viewing or a third viewing, like maybe it would grab me a little bit more. I loved the opening, like when the women are dancing in the club and like the Kiss Kiss song. Like, and I didn't know anything about it. Like I didn't know it was set in Djibouti. I didn't know it was about a French Legion. Like I literally didn't know anything. And I was like, oh, this is what this is about. Like this is really fun and cool here. And so I thought that was beautiful. Like I loved all the scenes of the Djiboutian people and like the colors and the brightness and the landscapes and the water and the mountains and like the women, like the scene of like the women when the Legion guys are like practicing their raid, and then there's like the 3 or 4 women like giggling together at like the guy climbing the telephone pole, you know? Like I just loved like the little things like that. But just overall, like I don't know, I just didn't really care about whatever like he was so upset about. I get it that it's like, I don't know, I'm sure we'll get into this more, but like maybe this whole like secret lust for this man, and so he hates him and all of this, but I don't know, I was just like, dude, just chill, like it's okay. I don't know. I did enjoy all of the Legion men's like very short shorts as they like worked in the sun, like definitely like very aesthetically pleasing movie. Like most aesthetically pleasing movie we've watched probably overall.
In terms of its short game, sure.
Yes, definitely in terms of the short game. Like there was one scene when they were like out, maybe it's even when they do the like this night portended everything, and it's like they're in their little like hats and jackets and then shorts, and like Jeremiah was like, what are they wearing?
It's hot there.
I know, that's what I was
there.
thinking
I know.
too. Yeah.
They're always in shorts.
It was almost like a funny reveal though, because it's like you see their hats, then you see them from like the waist up or something, then suddenly they cut to a wide shot and you're like, oh, they're all wearing these weird shorts with these uniforms. I was like, oh, French Foreign Legion be weird, y'all.
I know. But yeah, so aesthetically, like so great. And like the last like 20 minutes, I was like super into it because I was like, is he dead? Like, what is going on? And like the singing people with the camels, and then they find him. And is the other guy going to kill himself? And, you know, I was super into the last 20 minutes. The dance scene was so incredible. I totally agree with you, Alicia. Like, I played the song for Rowan tonight and she was like dancing around to it. And I was like, this is the rhythm of my life. Like I'm having this like super emotional like moment with this song. Like, you know, this is the rhythm of his life. Like, what is the rhythm of your life? So that was good. But there was just a lot of other stuff in there that I was just, I don't know, not really that invested in. But I would give it another shot. You know, I can see it being something that I agree with Jeremiah kind of about the headspace. I think I was just expecting something earlier to happen in the film that would be like a catalyst for something. And since it just wasn't coming, I kind of kept waiting. And I just think I needed someone to tell me it's not going to come and you just need to chill. And I just couldn't chill into the movie and go with it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the film.
All right.
Yay, shorts. Bad lack of catalyzing action earlier in the movie. In my opinion.
I don't know. It sounds to me like you liked it, man.
I know. I was going to say the same thing.
I liked aspects.
Say.
I mean, it's a 90-minute movie. 20 minutes out of a movie is a lot.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
like, where are we in the movie? Like, it was only 90 minutes, but I'll admit that Jeremiah and I were both like, how much is left? Like,
Oh, really? It sped by for me. Like, I was like,
Oh,
I didn't know
no.
it was going to be like this fast.
I mean, I think.
guilty.
Well, I want to let's let Michelle talk.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, what did you think of the movie?
I loved it, and I actually was wrong. I earlier when asked about what we knew about it, I think I had heard that it was kind of in some circles considered like maybe a gay kind of fantasy or movie that was, you know, heralded by the gay community. And I also think that I thought that it was going to be from the point of view of the young man. So I found that was surprising that it was from the point of view of the commandant, or was he the commandant? Yeah. And I just thought it was so lyrical, and I loved the rhythm and the flow of the editing and the pacing and the imagery. And I actually really liked the voiceover as well. I felt like it was, even though it was, you know, English translation of French, but I found it was really poetic, and it served the images just enough to to me, it made it feel, the story feel even more mysterious, and kind of slowly built up this anticipation of what's going to happen and the dread. Like I loved the lines where he talked about is Sentan? Is that how you say his last? Sentan? Yeah. About maybe, just it felt like very ominous. And I love, as you've all said, I loved the colors, the photography. As you said, Alicia, just being in such a different foreign land, world, that, maybe someday I'll be able to go to, but since thus far have not. I just really kind of drank up the imagery, and I loved the sound design, the crunching of the rocks under the boots, and and the very, very sparse dialogue. I don't even think anyone has an exchange for like the first 15 or 16 minutes,
Right.
not counting his voiceover. And I loved the use of music and just everything. And, I've been thinking about like what you guys talked about being in the right headspace. And I mean, this is obvious, we all intake experiences in films differently. Like for me, I don't know, this movie just hit me. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't care that it didn't have an inciting incident on camera that, we needed to kind of follow. I don't know. It's just, my sensibilities. I loved it. It was like eating a really satisfying meal, especially after watching, a bunch of, Marvel stuff and Princess Diaries and stuff. I just like as soon as into this movie, not far into this movie, I just felt like, oh yes, this feels so good.
Right. I wonder actually if part of the thing that tripped me up in watching this movie was that I knew a little bit about what the plot was, that it was like loosely based on Billy Budd. So I just kept waiting for that to kick in, and it wasn't obvious. And like, I mean, I could kind of tell, but like the actual mechanics of the plot were not until, like kind of Mia said, almost until the last 20 minutes of the movie or something. So I wonder if that, like I said, kind of hung me up on really enjoying it. Cause like I was watching it and I did also enjoy the visuals of the movie, but I kept like sort of being frustrated by waiting for an inciting incident that I was anticipating. And then also, like Mia said, like once the plot kind of kicked in, like I found it kind of exhilarating and interesting to watch, and in a different way, because I did find the visuals interesting, but like I found the story interesting more once the plot kicked in, definitely. But again, I do stick by thinking it's a headspace movie for me. Of like, I was not in the right headspace to enjoy this type of movie on a first viewing like this under these circumstances. And I think it was also just like, for us, just the circumstances of how we watched it, we were like fitting it between doing a million other things instead of like really taking time to just kind of like enjoy the movie and watch it with a clear head. So that never is helpful, especially for a movie that maybe is demands a little more of you. But Alicia, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say that in terms of like action happening in the film, I agree, like so much does happen in the last like 20 minutes or so that when I went back and watched it the second time, I had totally forgotten about stuff that did happen in the first half of the movie. Like there was a helicopter crash. You don't see the helicopter crash, but you see the aftermath of it. I had totally forgotten that happened. The stuff that happens in that nightclub sort of taxi sequence with the forestier chewing on the leaves and everything and talking to the taxi driver. I had totally forgotten about that. I kind of forgotten about the girlfriend. Like I have so much happened in that last 20 minutes. I mean, compared to the rest of the film, it's not like a super action-packed film overall, but like that when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh yeah, all this other stuff did happen.
Right.
I also sort of had it in my head that it was like, that I just was like watching like
a tone
movement and like men doing exercises and stuff. I forgot that like, oh yeah, like things did happen. But yeah, I think it it's easy to forget those things because it is just there's so much silence, and there's so much it's so much more about like this, that underlying like resentment or whatever that he's feeling towards Centene, that you kind of forget that like anything else was happening.
Right. Well, Michelle, yeah, what did you have to say?
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to add on. Not that this took away from my love for the movie, but I actually was bracing for more of a violent kind of climax. And we talk about spoilers on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So definitely him casting him out and then messing with the compass to sabotage him, could have been deadly. But yeah, I think maybe because I did watch the trailer online before, and I think there's that shot of an explosion of blood in the water, and I think that was related to the helicopter crash.
Yeah.
But and then it's just that tension and the it just felt, just from the trailer, I just felt like it was going to be a lot more violent than it was.
I have a question, because one thing when Mia and I were talking about the movie afterwards that I realized is, like, I realized that the compass went haywire, because I remember that shot that they hold on where it's just spinning around when he's in the out in the desert. But I missed completely that it had been tampered with. Like, when did that happen? Because I just didn't see it.
He writes about it in his journal.
Okay.
Yeah,
I must have missed
but
that.
I don't think we see him actually tampering.
Yeah, I missed that. So that would have been nice information for me to have. Yeah, sorry, Alicia, you said something.
I just said I missed it the first time too.
You did.
Like,
okay.
I kind of was like, what? I just thought I thought his compass just malfunctioned.
Yeah, same. I thought it was just a malfunction. So that like this thing that he was doing to punish him just ended up being more punishing by accident. So he still like took the blame for it, but it wasn't necessarily his fault. But like the fact that he tampered with it obviously changes that completely. So like I said, would have been nice information to have. Yeah, Stephen, did you want to say something? I thought I saw you.
Well, just that, like, I feel like this was one of those movies where it was like more like show, don't tell, because you could kind of see the tension kind of ratcheting up in a very slow way throughout the movie. So when it does kind of happen at the end, it's sort of, that's why a lot of the action does happen at the last 20 minutes. It's just sort of like, you see his reactions to all of the men, and he feels kind of isolated because they're so much younger. Plus, like, for me, it was kind of interesting that, like, Centene he looked like all the other guys, because I read Billy Budd a long time ago, but I thought Billy had just a physical different look than everybody else that was in the story. So with them, it seemed like he was part of the group of people. So that felt even more isolating, because when you look at what's the gentleman's name?
Centene.
He definitely looks different than Galoob, because he's such an older guy, and his face is definitely like weathered, and he feels like he knows everything, but yet he's still isolated. So I felt like that isolation kind of grew until he couldn't take it. So I felt like that sort of worked for this movie just because of the aesthetics.
Right. And maybe that goes back to what Alicia mentioned kind of in passing a moment ago, the resentment. So, I mean, I feel like if you know Billy Budd, you have a sense of what the resentment is. I feel like we've touched on it, but do you think that was totally clear? Like, say, if you didn't read Billy Budd, or just like, what does anybody think about that source of resentment? And to be clear, like, there's like a homosexual undertone to Billy Budd that I think is translated into this movie. So that's what I'm talking about. But is that clear?
Yeah, I think that's definitely there, and I think it's not explicitly stated, but I think it's like pretty clear. But what I was a little bit like unsure of, and I guess it could be happening on different levels, is there was like, but besides Galoob having his own like whatever possible attraction or and like self-hatred about Centene, there was also like something happening with the older gentleman, Forestier.
Bruno.
Yes, that I was like, is this, because he says at the beginning of the movie there were rumors about him after the Algerian conflict.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, so were those rumors that he was gay or that he like maybe made a pass at a soldier or something? Like what happened? We never find out. So I also thought he was kind of like, I also thought Galoup was kind of worried that like Forestier was attracted to Centane because Forestier does say some stuff to Centane that could be construed in that way.
Definitely.
I'm like, is he worried about Forestier's position? Is he worried about his own position, like being replaced by Centane in Forestier's eyes? Is it just his own thing with Centane that is happening? I was just kind of like, what exactly is happening?
Right.
I was okay with it not being fully clear because
Mhm.
I still really liked it overall, and I think all those things could all be true, all happening at once.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Well,
But
in
I
my
was
mind,
just,
in my mind, also Galoup, like I'm not sure he knows. I'm not sure
Yeah.
he is processing it as
Right.
like I'm attracted to this person. Like I think that's why there's like this crossed wire inside of him of like this attraction is coming out as violence or
Mhm.
resentment or whatever. And so
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
isn't there a point early in the movie where talking about Forestier, he says something about like he kind of looks up to him, but he's also like, not sure about him. So like I feel like he has that in his direction too, as I think you're kind of alluding to, Alicia.
Yeah. Like I love that part. If you remember, there's at first I didn't know if Forestier was dead because he was kind of talking about him in the past tense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there are those beautiful evocative shots of him where I don't know. This movie had so much where I'm like, why haven't I been watching Claire Denis movies? And I don't know if her other movies are like this at all, but like there's like a shot where like he's kind of in half silhouetted and he's looking at the camera. He might be smoking or something, and it just felt like a dream. Like so many of those shots felt like a dream. And also during that segment, that part, I thought of the film The Power of the Dog. It just popped into my mind. And have you seen that?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like similar dynamics. Benedict Cumberbatch's character has this fondness and this pining for this older cowboy that he learned a lot from and that who was his like mentor, and he like holds on to one of his like handkerchiefs or as a memento or something like that. And then he's got the younger kid staying on the ranch, and he kind of takes him under. Anyway, I know I'm sorry I'm talking about another film, but I
think it's worth bringing up. Like I
Yeah.
do think you're right that there are similar dynamics of this like confusion between lust and violence, repulsion and attraction.
And
I think-
power.
And
Yeah.
power. Yes,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
Well, when we do see Bruno at the beginning, they have that really attractive picture of him, like in black and white when you see it coming up.
yeah.
So of course you definitely are more attuned to that. But also, like I had to look up that what they were chewing on. Well, he was chewing on was a stimulant, and there was some line about how Galoup was like he wouldn't participate because he wanted to stay on edge all the time. And so I think he did kind of admire who Bruno was, being able to like, I don't care about anything. I could give a shit about what everybody thinks of me. And he sort of wishes he was that person, but he's
Right.
just not. And then seeing the what's his name? The Centane, he just wishes he was that person. And to see Bruno kind of gravitating towards him, he's just like, I've done everything perfectly like a Legionnaire does, and he doesn't like me like he does this other person who's kind
Right.
of more of a free spirit. So
Right.
it sort of, plays into the whole thing of him just getting so wound up about it and just having to do what he did at the end.
Yeah. Kind of to taking Michelle's lead of relating this movie to other movies. Because this movie came out in 1999, it also, not that I think the movies necessarily have that much in common, but like it sort of had me thinking tangentially of The Talented Mr. Ripley as another movie that sort of presents characters who seem to be confused between lust and repulsion,
or that it comes out as violence when it's not
Yeah.
reciprocated or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alicia, I think you wanted to ask something specifically about the inciting incident
Oh, yeah.
or perhaps absent inciting incident.
Yeah, I was very confused about what happened during the sequence where Galoop says that, oh, there was something that happened on this night that seemed to portend how things would end. And I just was never clear what exactly it was that happened. There was like a scene where they're like the men are like out at a nightclub, and then you see Galoop walking down the street, and he kind of goes up this staircase, and then he's only there for like a minute, and he turns back around and comes back down, and he seems like shaken, and then he goes and he like stops the taxi that Forestier is riding in, and Forestier and the taxi driver are having this kind of weird conversation too about like blood and fornication and how much is a Black woman's life worth here in this country or something. I don't know. It was I was like, did somebody get like raped or killed and we just
Right.
don't see it? And then there's also like there's a part where they're carrying one of the men. He's like shirtless, and he has some kind of like red bandana or something like wrapped around his shoulder sort of area, just a cloth. I don't know exactly what it is, but I was just like, something happened with blood, but I have no idea what.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely cryptic.
Yeah, I felt that was just confusing. I just didn't know exactly what it was. Again, it didn't take my enjoyment away, but I was confused about it.
Yeah. The only thing I can add to that was when they were talking about like how much is a colored girl worth, like I was thinking the taxi driver knew that Bruno might have been gay, and he was just sort of like making fun of him in a way, sort of like, because he knew that he wasn't interested in women at all. So like he was sort of saying that in that way to sort of, because he sort of laughed about it. So like it could go either way with that. That's the only thing I was thinking as an interpretation.
Right.
Yeah, I was just totally unclear. You're 100% right. I wasn't sure if their conversation pertained to whatever had happened or not. I just clocked that that was the conversation. And I was like, maybe that was about something that happened, but I wasn't sure.
When I think back on that sequence, I feel like I didn't watch what was going on with Galoop and then with the young men as happening like in the same space or connected, but the way you kind of describe it, Alicia, did you feel like, did they ever meet? Did they cross paths on that night?
I don't know, because there's a part where the men are walking in the street, or some men are walking in the street. I think it was them, and they kind of move out of the way for like cars to pass by. And then later you see Galoop literally standing in front of the taxi, like I presume trying to stop it, to say, talk to him. But I don't know if they saw each other, or I just haven't, I just felt like this was such a confusing sequence. I really don't know.
I guess I thought that they were being watched in that, because it was like this slow motion shot of the guys being hoisted on shoulders and carried down the street, right? And for some reason, it seemed like we were watching it from somebody's perspective, so I assumed it was Galoop's or Forestier's or something. I don't know, or both of theirs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it's open to interpretation, right? Like, I think it could be as simple as like he goes up to the bar and maybe he just sees them and is like, oh, I don't want to be here. Like they're out having a good time or whatever. Like, I don't want to be here where they are. You know what I mean? And just turns around and leaves immediately.
Yeah, maybe he just saw like good looking men and he was like, I can't deal with this. I mean, I'm not making a joke. Like,
for sure.
If he's someone who's like,
he's not that person. He's definitely one of those people that like, he's very structured. He's very outward. He wants people to look at him in a certain way.
Yeah.
And if he was at the dance club, with the other guys, they would think like, oh, he's one of us. He's having a good time and unleashing himself.
Yeah.
But he couldn't do that. So he had to immediately leave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he needs to be at the club where like all the women are dancing and dancing with a woman and, his girlfriend and that kind of stuff. So like it could have been as simple as that. He could have walked in and seen the men doing something with each other, some like take it a step further from that, right? And been like, oh my God, what is going on here, and left. Or you could have seen something, more to what Alicia was saying, like maybe something more violent or something, and just been like, oh, even more. So like, I need to get out of here. I think any of those situations is plausible.
Yeah, I guess like when you were talking earlier, I think maybe Jeremiah's like about violence and sex being kind of kind of the same coin almost. It's like it could have been either one because they both could have been perceived as the same thing.
True.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe it doesn't matter what it was because for him, they're confused anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It did seem like something must have happened with the young men, right? Like the guy they were hoisting up, they were celebrating kind of, or like you did it.
Clear.
You either killed somebody or you, lost your.
Or they just like really pulled a nice move on the floor,
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're
That
all
does
young
portend
guys.
the very last scene, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, that is the thing. Like connecting it to that statement is like, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I watched it on the Criterion channel, and right afterward was a conversation between Barry Jenkins and Claire Denis, and so I watched that.
Yeah.
And I don't think she mentioned Billy Budd at all.
Really.
And she talked about either when she first presented the screenplay or the film was done, that it angered, I think, the people who asked her to make the film, because they said this is gay, and then she in her explaining it, that wasn't part of the message of the movie. That it was more about like the humans, the individuals within the system of the French Legionnaire, and that even though they're in this system, that the humanness it takes over, and so she talked about like Galoob being jealous, and the jealousy, and then and then the lust, but like she wasn't looking at it or presenting it through any kind of lens of this is supposed to be speaking on gay experience or anything.
Yeah. I mean, she can say that, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
She
true.
can say that.
I mean, she can say whatever she wants to say, but like, it stands that if it's loosely based on Billy Budd, it's hard to divorce it from the potential homosexuality that you might expect to be underpinning the story. And that article that I sent, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but it also said it made the argument that maybe the thing to look to more for this movie is actually the opera based on Billy Budd from the 50s, and the composer of that was homosexual, and like there's discussion around that, and the music that we hear throughout the movie, a lot of it is from that opera, so which is part of what they're basing that claim on, of like where the inspiration lies.
I think that either way, the military is like the perfect metaphor for exploring that, because you don't have to come out and say that is what it's about, but it's obviously about somebody trying so hard to fit into some extremely structured society, and then just it breaking them, and something violent occurs, and not that always is what happens in real life when people are gay, but I'm just saying, like, obviously, but like I think she was trying really hard to also like avoid from what I read about Billy Budd, the character that would be like the Galoob person, was like more written as like this like villainous gay character.
Right.
That and so she was trying really hard to like explore the fact that this person did do something that he shouldn't have done. He did do something wrong, but like show you a more empathetic reasoning behind why what happened. And I think setting it in the military does that too, because he is trying really hard to fit into that structure.
Right. Yeah, and it's been a while since I read Billy Budd, but from the article I gleaned, and it reminded me, I guess, that in Billy Budd, the character that Galoob is sort of based on is the one that character dies. Like the incident is that Billy Budd accidentally kills him. And then the captain of the ship or whatever, who would be like the approximation of Forestier, starts like, then he's overcompensating because he also has feelings for Billy Budd, and he court martials Billy Budd and like strings him up from the mast to kind of like hide that he actually has affection for this young man as well. So even in that book, both the ranking officers seem to be attracted, and I don't necessarily mean sexually attracted, but just like attracted in some fashion to Billy Budd. They take notice of him, and everybody kind of does. And I think in the novella, at least. So do we have any other thoughts we want to get into about this, or should we move on?
I really enjoyed the ironing scene. That's not my favorite scene in the movie, but I did enjoy watching it. Precision ironing is not much you see in movies. So
Yeah.
I wanted to say I thought that the operatic music I thought was really effective too. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are our thoughts on Beau Travail. We'll share our final thoughts on the movie and answer our bonus question after this break. And we're back. So, what was your favorite scene or moment or some element of the movie, whether it's the music or cinematography? It doesn't have to be like a plot moment, a scene necessarily. Michelle, how about we start with you?
I would say I was most fond of the editing and the rhythm of the shots, and also the camera work. How I think for most of the film it was a static camera, and a lot of times we were like coming into the moment after something had happened. Like for example the helicopter crash or other moments we've talked about earlier. And I don't know, I just was very entranced by how all of the shots kind of just flowed together and I think the sound design was very key in that. And I felt like it was very hypnotic and satisfying.
Yeah. And Stephen, how about you?
I really liked, I think when they were doing the obstacle course, there was just something about like the muscles that were moving with the guy with the green hat, and he was very dark skinned and just moving through. For some reason that scene, it was just sort of like aesthetically just looked really interesting. Especially in the backdrop. So I just think a lot of the scenes in the movie, since they were so sparsely kind of put together, they just were very powerful. Right. And I really like that part.
Okay. And Mia?
Yeah, that obstacle course was crazy. It's like, oh my God, these guys are like so fit. I really loved the dance sequence at the end. Just loved it. Amazing.
Alicia?
Yeah, I also really loved the dance sequence at the end. I'm trying to think if there was like another moment, but I think it's just so perfect, and it just caps the movie perfectly.
I'm going to say that the cinematography is my favorite part of the movie, specifically the use of color, which I guess also brings in production design or art direction. And I honestly wonder if you could maybe write a whole like essay about the use of the color blue in this. For some reason, like it seemed like blue, like if I close my eyes and think of this movie, I think of like blue against white. I know there are other colors at play in the movie, but like it seemed like blue meant something throughout the movie for some reason. So I if I was to watch the movie again, I think I'd have an eye on that. So has the movie, as far as you're concerned, stood the test of time? Or another way of framing it, do you think it resonates today? And Stephen, let's start with you.
I think it does. And I feel like it is one of those movies that you either have to be in the right mood to watch or you need to watch a few times, because I feel like you will get more out of it. But I think it does stand the test of time in terms of the construction of the movie, and in terms of what you're going to get out of it, even if you don't necessarily know what the plot is. So
Right. Okay, Michelle.
Yes. I feel like it's timeless and just for the filmmaking and also the themes explored.
And Mia.
I'm gonna optimistically say yes. You guys like convinced me to like it a little bit more through this conversation.
You've
So
done our
like
job.
I know, yeah. Like I mean, already I was like, I would watch it again. Like, I would totally give it another shot. I agree with like our last month of life has just been like really hectic with like a lot of trips and like work and like things going on. So I just feel like we're kind of like, okay, like another thing we have to do. Like not really the time to like sit and watch and like just like relax into the movie. So, anyways, I would watch it again. So just to not be like a total but, I'll just say yes.
All right. Alicia.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's not that old. It's only like 23, 24 years old, but yeah, I think it's still relevant. The stuff that the themes it explores are still very relevant in our society. I think people always want to break out of structures that are holding them back no matter what. So for that, it definitely holds up.
Yeah, I mean, I think on this one, like I could take myself out of it. Like I think the movie proves it is timeless or resonates in some way because it's first off adapting a work from long ago, and then the movie is 20 years old and it's now considered one of the greatest movies of all time as of 6 months ago. So like obviously it resonates with people, and there's stuff in it that translates across time. So I think it would be silly to say otherwise. And I think the themes of it like are themes that are almost like, I don't want to say a Rorschach test because that sounds odd, but like, I think someone reading Billy Budd when it was released can't necessarily, depending on who they are, what context they're having the conversation, have the same conversation about that story that we can have about this movie. You know what I mean? Of like the topic that it touches on of homosexuality and lust and all this. Like you can have a more open conversation about that these days. So I think that's maybe important to note. Although, some people would like us to stop. So our bonus question, let's move on to our bonus question. What movie do you think uses extensive voiceovers the best, or at least really well? And Stephen, why don't we start with you again?
I'm going to say Clueless. Because I really did like, because I just watched that actually just last week again, and I was like, I really love this movie. But I was thinking about like how Cher's voice is just definitely perfect for, she uses like colloquial language, and she really propels the story by the way that she talks. And, you get an inner voice, and she's a kind person. So I think it just really works for the way that she's talking. You feel like you're having a conversation with her as she's playing out her life. I really like that.
All right, Mia.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but Election uses a lot of voiceover, and I really like that movie. So that's what I'm gonna say as my movie. I don't specifically remember the voiceover, but it's such a good movie, so I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah, it's got good voiceovers.
There you go.
I remember them though. Michelle.
I had to Google it. I Googled earlier, and so a few of my faves popped up, and I don't know really which to talk about. It's been a while since I've seen them, but I mean, Goodfellas, the Henry Hill character, and then toward the end when he actually, he's having the breakdown and and making the pasta sauce, and he like looks at that is that the first time I think that he addresses the camera and he, us and talk and breaks fourth wall. So I would say that, and then I'd forgotten that Badlands, which is one of my favorite movies. I think Sissy Spacek's character, gives, but I don't know if it's like as much as Galoop's was in this. You know what I mean? I feel like
it's a lot.
Yeah, right. Like it, and I think that again, like I think it really helps ground you, because otherwise you're just, you're kind of just floating through the
I mean,
scenes.
if you want to talk about a king of voiceovers in movies, Terrence Malick. Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of his whole thing.
Yeah. And in Days of
So,
Heaven. Oh, Days
yeah.
of Heaven, the little girl. Yeah.
Like every
That's
movie,
great.
like it's
Yeah.
just like, let's shoot someone walking through a field and put a voiceover.
Yeah.
A
Trademark.
poetic voiceover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have others, Michelle? Sorry.
Oh, and then one other one that I was like, oh yeah, Stand By Me, which, that's definitely a kind of a conventional storytelling device, more than this was, where, he's like writing the story and then he's looking back on his life, and it kind of, the old hymn bookends the movie, but it's done really well, I think.
I thought about Goodfellas as well. I also thought about a movie we've covered recently on the podcast. I'm sure there's more movies that we've covered with good use of voiceover, but Apocalypse Now has a great voiceover. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, didn't Hiroshima Mon Amour have voiceover? So that's another one. But the one I really want to point to as maybe my favorite use of voiceover is Sunset Boulevard. Because anytime I've read about or been told about, like at film school or something, the impact that voiceover had, of like the movie starts with a voiceover from a dead man that like the first thing you see is a dead man in a pool, and then he's giving the voiceover and you're like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, I mean, that's not that unusual to us now, but when that movie came out in, what was it, like 1950, that was kind of that was dramatic, that was a big thing. So I think that's a great one.
Yeah, I think another honorable mention would be The Shawshank Redemption.
Sure.
Because it's Morgan Freeman, and you can't go wrong with hearing him for 2 hours.
Yeah, I feel like that's the archetypal Morgan Freeman voiceover performance. Alicia, how about you?
I was also going to say Sunset Boulevard.
Oh.
So I'll say Trainspotting because I love that movie.
Well, our next episode is Michelle's pick. You want to tell people what your pick is?
Yes, it's David Lynch's masterpiece, Mulholland Drive.
That's it for this episode of the Stereoactive Movie Club. You can subscribe to the show just about anywhere you listen to podcasts. We invite you to join our conversation about movies by joining our Facebook group. And you can find a link to that along with our email address, links to a lot of other places where you can find the show, and other info by going to stereoactivemedia.com/movie club. If you have a moment, please rate and review the show on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that allows you to do that. It helps others to find the show, and we really appreciate it. Also, you can get updates about this show and plenty of other stuff by following or subscribing to Stereoactive Media on YouTube, Instagram, or Threads. Thanks for listening.
Stereoactive Movie Club.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.